All right, man. Thanks for coming back on the show. I really appreciate you carving out some time for me. I know you're pretty busy these days, right?
Yeah, yeah, no problem, man. I enjoy the show, and I'm just happy to be back on with you.
Cool, man. Just really quickly, so people know who you are. Who are you? What do you do in your own words?
My name is Timothy Green the Fourth. For those of you
Hmm.
who don't know me, some people do. Currently in a modern history teacher and political science teacher at Bosque Independent School. Currently working on my PhD in LLSS, which is Language, Linguistics, and Sociocultural Studies.
Yeah.
Focus is specifically education and sociocultural studies.
Okay.
So, getting a PhD in education,
Oh.
critical education to be exactly.
Okay.
Uh, so everything from decolonial theory to Marx to anything that's critical,
Good.
critical theory, and this crit theory. I mean, we do it all. So I think it's a good
Yeah.
merge with political science. So that's where I'm at.
Okay.
And I'm an educator. I just teach.
Yeah. Is that your long-term goal with this doctorate?
Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
is to be but not in the right. I think there's a difference between educator and teacher.
Okay.
I think um, educators bringing out the passions and highlighting
Mm.
um, the kind of what people already possess, right,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
opening a new world for them. Whereas teaching is more, I see it as kind of you're kind of teaching somebody maybe to the test or maybe to learn a certain skill, which is
Yeah.
very important in itself. But being an educator is a little bit more intimate and a little bit more personal, right?
Okay.
And it also, I think, an educator, it also includes the formal and the informal, right? I mean,
Okay.
education is
Hmm.
always about going to
Yeah.
school,
Yeah.
and you know,
No, I absolutely agree. I think a big part of being a person of color, specifically, just jumping straight into that. I think it's what I think a big part of my experience is my personal experience is being first gen Mexican American, and not being one of the first to the only in my family to get a master's degree, the one of the first to even go to college. I end up being the mentor and the guide to a lot of people in my family, a lot of my community. So teaching in that fashion, I think, is the more non-traditional kind of way of looking at it. It's public scholarship, and
absolutely.
right.
Yeah, man. I mean, and you're walking two worlds, right? If you want to get into
Hmm.
like colonial thought, like you
Right.
are able to function inside of the settler colonial society that we live in, which I think
Hmm.
is being amplified. People are starting
Yeah.
to realize,
Yeah.
uh, especially if you're a person of color. I don't think it's anything new, but
Hmm.
you're able to straddle both worlds, and it's very important because, as you're saying, there's so much more to education, right? And knowledge. There's ancestral knowledge, right?
Hmm.
There's capital that you bring
Hmm.
UNM or wherever you work,
Right.
maybe they have no idea, right? And so you're in a unique space where you have to, as a brown person, I think as all brown people who are somewhat conscious in a settler colonialist society, you have to straddle that line where
Hmm.
you have to maintain culturally sustain who you are as a human being, but also it's necessary to survive in the system that we're currently in. I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different factors to it, right? I'm all about I can't remember his last name, Giannis, something Greek or something or other, Grecian economist elected to parliament, the parliament, like EU Parliament. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yanalaponis or Anawak?
Yeah. And he's just one of my faves. But he, a big, a lot of what he does, it talks about or like preaches is just in and against, right? Or constructive disobedience, approaching the table with a solution. Because if you deconstruct and you have like a revolution, that's all fine and dandy. But if you don't have anything to replace it with, there's a power vacuum. Right. So you have to be constructively disobedient and think of like, how are we going to move forward? Right.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting. I think a lot of what you're describing is very exhausting because you're on in all these other different spaces in different capacities. So you're not just code switching language wise, but code switching yourself, your personality, and doing all these different things. And I know a lot of brown people out there are very much like, especially with our white friends or white colleagues, and I hear a lot of people saying like, it's not up to me to educate you, Google it. And I get it. I pick my battles. And sometimes I'm just tired. I'm just like, you know what, get at me later. It's not a big deal. But for me, I have this fear of being complicit in people learning it the wrong way,
Uh,
learning bad information. So I almost feel like I have a responsibility to make sure that I'm guiding them in a certain direction. And, not necessarily saying no, but being like, hey, let's set up a time for coffee and let's do it at this other time. I can't, but also, giving them the resources and teaching them how to teach themselves.
okay. Yeah. No, I hear
Does that
you.
make sense? I mean, I don't know. I don't know which camp you're in.
No, I hear you. I mean, we're gonna go. Good morning. Hey, we're going straight to race. Hey, good
I
morning.
mean, politics. I mean, politics in the U.S., man. I mean, whether it's socioeconomics, whether it's politics, it's a part of it.
Yeah,
You can't escape it. So try to have those discussions and not.
absolutely.
It is who we are.
No, it is. It's the fabric of this nation. Like I said, settler
Yeah.
colonial nation. So if you can't talk politics or anything about this nation without talking about race.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I believe you're starting to see, right? I mean, from a virological perspective, and I'm just going to talk about COVID-19 amplifying race and
Yeah. Yeah.
racism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Virologically, we're all human beings. There's only one race, the human race, right? We have different ethnicities, different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
But what
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing is the man-made hierarchies and arbitrary divisions is creating disparities in different communities, right? We have like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no coincidence. I would be remiss, right, if we didn't talk about our brothers, our indigenous brothers and sisters, to just like an hour west of us, who
Mm-hmm.
have the highest per capita infection rate, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're starting to see white settler colonialists in terms of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
trying to limit their lockdown. One governor came out in Utah calling it a hoax. You're starting to see
Mm.
very, very disparaging language around addiction
Mm.
or cleanliness.
Really?
Yeah. So yeah, I think as a brown person, you always carry this burden, right? And then you have white friends and colleagues and allies, and sometimes accomplices. There's a
Mm-hmm.
difference. And for me, I think I take the same position as you, is that I have no choice but to educate them, because if I don't
Yeah.
educate them, who's going to? And that does not always mean just because you're, what did they say? Your skin folk ain't always your kin folk, right? Just because
Mm.
a person is brown
Yeah.
or black
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they're consciously aware of what's going on, or they may take a different position, and that's their freedom and liberty. But
They internalize it, right? They internalize the oppression.
exactly. And so I think for me, absolutely, I have to educate.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, maybe pick the battles of when to educate. But we're starting to see white fragility, right? Like this is
Oh,
white fragility all over the country.
yeah.
We're starting to see disparities based on arbitrary and historical discrimination in African American communities,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
indigenous communities, Mexican American communities, Latino, so Latinx communities. So it, I think if you just follow the history of this country, as you're saying, it's largely based on race and socioeconomic class, right? And then there's a whole
Yeah.
gender
Yeah.
perspective
Yeah.
around domestic violence, and so
I mean,
uh,
it's all this stuff, right? It's just it's amplifying everything that already was there, right? It's not necessarily, it's not creating anything new. And it's the fallout and the side effects are going to be even greater with, I mean, with evictions and with rent and with all that stuff and job losses. These are the people that are going to end up paying. I saw something yesterday very interesting around the idea of just like people. I mean, landlords, yeah, they shouldn't be collecting rent, but the most of that money does go to the banks and all these big companies, but then there's a portion of that that goes to property taxes, and that comes full circle because those taxes pay for services that protect us, that educate us, that all this stuff. So in the long run, if we don't pay it, it's going to come back down to us. But if we're worried, that's further down the line, we're worried about this month. So
right.
the system is the burden's gonna be on the poor people, which tend to be disproportionately people of color,
Yep.
regardless, right? It's just BS. So, but I did want to touch on something really quickly before we kind of pick it back up there. And you said something about biology, right? So the idea of race it's a total social construct. Humans are just humans, and you're right, we have different ethnicities. With that said, I saw something also recently that, again, going down the biological path, I'm by no means an expert. I don't think you are either. Correct me if I'm wrong, but something along the lines of like, it studies in China and different parts of the world, people with vitamin D deficiencies tend to have higher um, infection rates
Mm.
and worse infections with the disease itself, with COVID-19. With that said, um, individuals with higher melanin who live in more northern areas, where certain rays of UVB come in, or less rates of that, they have a more difficult time absorbing it, right? Because it's just at a higher latitude. They can absorb it more, as much vitamin D. So people of color who are further north are more vitamin D deficient. Therefore, they're more prone to get this as well. Have you? I mean, that's very. I just kind of told you a bunch of stuff. That's very, very superficial, very interesting. So essentially, the point being that people of color who tend to live in the United States and Europe tend to be disproportionately impacted by this virus, not just socioeconomically, these resources, but also because we tend to be more vitamin D deficient because of these things, right? I think one of the examples I heard was a Somali population in Sweden, tend to be, disproportionately kind of impacted in that sense. That seems like an extreme. I don't know. But on top of that, we also have the system that we exist in. If we're disproportionately impacted biologically, we also have the least amount of resources to be able to recuperate from that.
Yeah,
It's a lot of info.
I, like you said, that's not my area of expertise. I have emerging
Yeah.
expertise in education and politics.
Yeah, no, of course.
There's a reason I went soft science rather than hard.
No,
I,
it's all good.
but I totally respect science, biology. I mean, obviously, scientists. I, but I would need to see like probably
Yeah, like a study, right?
studies, like numerous studies from
Hmm.
multiple countries, a very very large sample rate, right?
Hmm.
A
Hmm.
small sample. I mean, and I'm not saying those are. I'm just saying that I would really need to see some strong evidence, and because right now for me, it all leads to politics and so man's creation. I mean, but I
Yeah,
can't,
no, absolutely, yeah.
so I think that's where I'm going to go with that one because I don't want to.
Well, there's nothing we can do about our skin color, right? So there's nothing we can do about our skin color. So at the end of the day, I mean, that is biological. So there's nothing we can do about that. How can we mitigate it? Is essentially what we do have control over, right?
Yeah, probably, and I would probably go back to our own social networks, cultural capital, probably reinvesting in those social networks where, I mean, it's basic. Look, like you touched on something really important. You talked about property and rent, but it goes back to the larger system of like neoliberal policies that we live in.
Hmm.
And like they say, and I would counter that idea of like not paying, we as the poor people not paying rent, and then it comes back to affect us, yes. But then I would challenge and say, well, what about neoliberal policies of deregulation, defunding, that allow outsourcing and allow people to then go to the Cayman Islands and put millions and billions of
Hmm.
dollars offshore, which then they don't pay any taxes to, right? And so
Hmm.
that burden. And
Hmm.
so I get the argument that we, right? And it said, I mean, when you read Marx, it literally says like the system will have to eat the people. Like, and we're seeing a system, it's always eating people, but it's like literally
Yeah.
now, I mean, you have a whole authoritarian, I'm just going to say this, an authoritarian administration, right?
Yeah.
There,
Yeah.
thousands of people are dying and they're shifting the blame. They're like, we need to reopen the economy. Some of you are
Hmm.
going to have to pay. And
Hmm.
so people are mad at governors, which, yeah, rightly so they should be. But I think people also have to examine the system we live in, right? Like
Hmm.
Bernie Sanders and other social democratic, and there's problems with social democratic countries, we know, right? But
We'll get
compared,
there. Yeah.
right, we'll get there. But the system we live in compared to now, like
Hmm. Hmm.
everything is commodified. Everything
Right.
is a data point where you become a homo economicus where you are devoid of values and morals. Right?
Right. Can you consume, or you're a consumer or you're a producer? That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think it goes back to, like I'm saying, the larger system that we live in. And for me, it's like, is it going to worsen? Is it going to be deeply entrenched now? Where
Yeah.
like global capitalism, interconnectedness, globalization, neoliberal policies are it, and populism is on the rise? Or are we going to try to reshift society into something that we want, right? Like,
Mm.
care system is a joke in this country. Let's just be flat out,
No, no,
right?
that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
And the education digital divide that we're seeing in this country, as
Uh-huh.
an educator, I teach at a private school. So I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you, but I don't come from a private school.
Oh
I
no,
don't,
for sure. No, no,
right?
no, absolutely. I get you. Yeah.
And it's like night and day. And these
Mhm.
kids, we were absolutely fine to just go online and resume our classes. But the digital divide in this country between people of color, as you're saying, in public schools, and those kids in independent schools, it's night and day. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at, I don't want to go off on a tangent. What I'm getting at is that we have a real opportunity to shift society, and I think there are
Yeah.
people who are attempting to do this, and there are
Mhm.
people in the private sector. But again, the nation state itself, the administration that we have, the government, and
Mhm.
the leadership, and the economic policies, it's going to make it very, very hard for us as a human collective humanity to solve COVID-19. And you're already
Yeah.
starting to see that.
Yeah, and I do believe that we need some sort of I won't go all the way out to communist, right? But like because people associate it with a lot of, different things. And I do want to make sure that I'm clarifying that economic systems and forms of governing are two completely different things. Like communism, socialism, and capitalism are different than authoritarianism, republicanism, or democracies, right? They can all mix and match. Just
Yes, well, and
FYI.
they overlap and they can be
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's not the idea, it's not mutually like communism and authoritarianism aren't mutually exclusive, right? Or they are.
no, um,
They are,
uh,
though they are. That's such a weird statement to say because it's like counterintuitive. So they can exist separately, is what I'm trying to say, right? So they're yeah, you can, I mean, there has been a communist that was elected democratically in a South American country, and we all, oh, some of you, if you look it up, just put it that way, see what happened to him. But it can happen. But with that said, that's coming together, and communism and socialism, or the idea of like coming together as a community and letting go of these ideas of like pulling yourself up by your shoestraps and individualism and hyper individualism. Those are the paths that we can take, in my opinion, right? And one's going to help us all come out of this together, and the other one's going to benefit a few. um
yeah, I agree with you, and so like social democracy, right? It's this idea to use
yeah.
capitalism in a responsible way to allow the social development and social investment inside
Hmm.
of people, right? It's a very
Hmm.
European idea to invest in your social capital, but it's using capitalism not as predatory, even though capitalism and its basis
Hmm.
is predatory, but it's using it in a responsible way. So I
Yeah.
think I take that position. Now, the rest of the world, yeah, there are socialist governments and communist governments in Latin America and in Africa, all over the world. Even here, there's parties here in America.
I mean, there's neoliberal dictators for years.
Yes, absolutely, right. And so, um, yeah, I think that I don't know what form of governance, right?
Hmm.
Because as you study, there's problems with all of them. But for me, I lean more social democratic, as I
Yeah.
do believe in that. I think that's the best right now. Um, but yeah, I think it is time for a shift in society. But I just don't know if the forces that be will let that happen. And I think like I said, I mean, you're starting to see that all over the world, right? We have Bolsonaro, right? The rival
Hmm.
populism and nationalism are actually worsening with COVID-19, right? You have a
Yeah.
propaganda and narrative
It's
war
fear.
between,
Yeah.
yeah, China and America, where it's being called the Chinese, the Wuhan virus, every other
Hmm.
racial,
Hmm.
right, slur.
Yeah.
And then you have China saying, but hold on, Americans came here. And their whole thing is that if we can just plant the seed that it might be an American conspiracy, we've done it. Because what they're doing is they're battling for like geopolitical supremacy of the international community. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, China has soft power, right? It has the String of Pearls initiative. It has, the whole train initiative. I forgot what it's called, the New Silk Road initiative,
Yeah.
where it's setting up ports and trading ports and it's owning. And then you have America. It's all about isolationism. It's all about power, might, military force. So populism is on the rise. You know, you got Bolsonaro. Like I said, Brazil is hurting right now. I mean,
Oh
Brazil
no, they just surpassed. I think they're number 4 right now with cases, right?
absolutely just
Yeah.
doing absolutely. I mean, and it's interesting to
Hmm.
see
Hmm.
the right wing response, the global right wing response, versus you would say the global leftist or centrist response to it. Like you have like Angela Merkel in Germany,
Right. Right.
right, where their
Yeah.
cases are extremely low.
Hmm.
At the same time, you have fissures within the EU because Angela Merkel in Germany, they let Ireland say, you guys fend for yourself. They're devastated.
Hmm.
Italy is fending for itself. So you have fissures in the EU. So I don't know what this is going to do geopolitically, but I
Yeah.
do know that it's going to change the landscape. Um, and I think being an American, it's going to be tough. Like I think you're going to have to get tested everywhere you go because nobody's going to want the American disease.
Yeah, I mean, we're the epicenter of that now, right? And it's the American disease before used to be just us wearing cargo shorts and being ultra annoying and loud. But now it's this, and it's evolving into different variations of in strains as well. So that's a different crazy thing. But it's I mean, I don't think we're even close to the end of this. Mostly because we just, again, it's calling out the myth that we're the best nation and this or that is getting called out, and not by other people, but by the fact that we have a lack of infrastructure and support and resources for our poor, and just it's amplified, like I said before. So you're able to see the impact, and that's why we're the epicenter. I mean, it's no surprise our healthcare system is flawed. Our education system is flawed. I mean, there's so many kids out there without internet, without computers, without devices to be able to access that. And then a lot of what I keep hearing is from teachers as well, that as time goes on, their students kept falling off, so their classes just became smaller and smaller and smaller. So if a parent can't stay home with their kids, the kid's not going to jump on their own, so it's creating a bigger gap. And yeah, my hope is that this something shifts. I can't help but I'm not a fan of populism in either direction. Right. I feel like I'm always suspicious of anything. And I think that's just me studying authoritarianism in Latin America for so long. It's just like, I don't know. Let me question it a little bit. But I do feel like after the primary situation in the US with the DNC this last time around, I I don't want to say I'm hopeless. I think I always come. I think every 4 years I'm like, okay, maybe this time, and that's just the hopeless romantic in me. But I I feel kind of. I mean, I don't think Bernie's coming back for another one, right?
No,
I think he's done. Alexandra Ocasio Cortez, I feel like maybe she should make a run at it when she's old enough. I think she's still in her early 30s. So, but who knows if that's even on her radar, right? I think it's. What do you think is next? I mean, in 4 years, Joe says he's only going to, be president for 4 if he wins.
oh, politics will never be the same in this country. I think.
Okay.
I think. I think. Let me tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
Him. I think this is what we all do. We're just pontificating. I
Mm-hmm.
think you've seen what can potentially happen. So if
Yeah.
Donald Trump loses the election, you're going to have his base, which are right wing
Mm-hmm.
militias,
Mm-hmm.
right? The three percenters, the good old boys, the
Mm-hmm.
boogaloo, right? The boogaloo are the people who believe in civil war. The three percenters are ones that believe in like 3% of the Aryan race. All these crazy
Yeah.
far right extremists, which is a very small percentage of America and white America, but have a big amplified voice and very big guns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, being like we have to talk about the erosion of democracy in this country, not also with the implementation of like far right wing judicial implementations of judges, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what Trump and the Republicans are doing now is they're getting rid of all the old judges in the federal courts because at the end of the day, this country, the only thing that can strike down legislation is the courts, and they know that. And so what
Mm-hmm.
they do is to put in all the young far right Republicans and look it up. There's all kinds of stuff being written about it, papers,
Mm-hmm.
putting to judiciary offices to setting themselves up because they know at the end of the day, brown people are on the rise in this country. This was
Mm-hmm.
a colonialist nation at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The second wave of white people came. Before that, it was majority black and brown bodies. What I'm saying is enslaved Africans and indigenous peoples who were here before mass genocide of the 1800s, right?
Right. Right.
Then a second wave of white people were brought into the settler colonialist colony, right? Then that's when you start to have anti-immigration laws of the 1800s, where they don't want any type of Chinese, they don't want any,
Mm-hmm.
they let
Mm-hmm.
all the white people from Ellis Island, right? That's history.
Yeah.
If you don't
Yeah.
know it, go look it up. What I'm getting at is that the white people, they know that this was a settler colonialist nation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is a very critical race theory perspective framework, whatever.
Sure.
But if the brown people are on the rise in terms of numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and the brown people vote a certain way, the Republican Party is no longer like neutral party. Everybody pretty knows like it's pretty fucking racist. Like it's pretty sexist.
Yeah. No.
It's
Yeah.
racist. It's
Yeah.
gendered. It's like
Yeah.
xenophobic.
Yeah. There's
And,
no hiding it. Yeah.
and Fox News is the spout, right? That's taking America like so. We're already past that. You know, if you're offended, whatever. If not, I'm just keeping it real. This is where
I mean, if you're listening to the show still after so many episodes and you're thinking that way, and like kudos to you, man. Like, you know what? Give you props that you're listening through this. But
what I'm saying is that they realize this, and so they're implanting this to part of the judiciary, right? But then you have this far right extremist base, right? These protesters who are shutting down democratic processes in Michigan, and they're trying to shut them down. And these anti-vaxxers, these anti-open up, social distancing protests. Are you kidding? Those are dangerous militias. Those are terrorist acts, Oscar.
right.
You know it.
No, I know.
Happen in Latin America?
Yeah.
Come on, those
Yeah.
police. And then let's just ask this: if that was me, right, black or some Muslim people that were with long rifles yelling and cops, they would have had my ass on the ground fast. Yeah. You know what?
I mean, I've seen you at a protest, and I'm just like, dude, you're gonna get me arrested, bro. Like, I need to walk away.
Exactly.
So yeah, exactly, yeah.
So I think that's what you're gonna see. I think that you have the potential to see. I think he's gonna get reelected. I think that this country, functions. It's not like India where they democratically elect based off of like ethnicity, nationality, and all this. This country is based off of economics, and presidents who do good on the economy are usually reelected. Now with COVID-19 and the economy slumping with 33 plus million, I don't know.
Right.
But I don't go against white fragility. I'm sorry, but
no. I mean, like it's
I
just
go against it, but I'm saying I don't doubt it. Is what I'm saying.
It's a powerful thing, and then it's there with how the communities that are being impacted right now with all of this. I mean, the idea that they're going to be able to go out and vote, or they're going to get to vote, or they know how to kind of request absentee ballots. That's just it's uphill battle.
Absolutely right. So exactly. And what I'm saying, white fragility is what I'm saying is that, like you said, is that there are forces behind this white fragility, right? There's an white supremacy is an ideology. Not all white people are white supremacists. Now, if you subscribe to it, yeah. Now, are white people beneficiaries of it? Hell yes. But not all white people are white supremacists. Right. And so, damn, I forgot what I was gonna say.
I mean, it's all like, I think you're kind of going along the lines of like, this is a tool, right? Fragility, and then like
what I was saying, it's a tool, and what I'm saying is that I think due to the rise of nationalism, populism, and the impact of these far right-wing militias, right, and then the amplifying, and it's not only Fox News, it's the liberal news as well, because mainstream, it's manufactured content, just like Noam Chomsky said, and they are also help normalizing Trump's actions, right? Like Trump is, are we not, like, we're in like places that we've never been before. Like Trump is inciting violence through Twitter almost like every other day, dude, right? Like, he supports good people on both sides who hold up, Albert Mike, like Nazi slogans of "work will free you." Are you crazy? Like Nazi flags, Confederate flags.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what I'm getting at is that I think that even though it's a very small base, Trump's actions, white supremacy and white fragility has become normalized in this country. And I think he will be reelected. I think I'm preparing myself. And when he's reelected, I think you're going to see more draconian laws and policies, which we all know, right?
Yeah, because at that point, I mean, it's you have nothing to lose.
Well, then what happens when he does lose? He's going to call it an illegitimate election. He's going to call it rigged. He's going to call it a democratic hoax, just like he did COVID, right? he's gonna, and his militia, and that's where the dangerous part. It's not
Hmm.
so much that a bunch of people are, it's those people with a small amount of guns who have tactical training because they live for this type of, they itch for this type of violence. They believe in
They're
these.
waiting. They're chomping at the bit.
They're
Yeah.
waiting. They read stupid shit like the Turner Diaries, the
Yeah.
fucking international, what it follows, Fall of Grace, whatever it is,
Hmm.
where these guys
Hmm.
sometimes talk about at the end of the day, it's like a helter skelter where they're going to kill all the brown people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have militias who have whole armies, houses full of guns. Like
Yeah.
it's very scary, and I think that is what is going to happen if Trump is contested in November. Now, if he wins, I think it's business as usual,
Right.
authoritarian. I think draconian policies. I think immigration and all kinds of stuff is going to be even stricter.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
I mean, that's the scary part, right? That's the scary part because I mean, it was scary at first, but like once you win the second term, I mean, all you really have to worry about is the midterms after that. But you know,
well, then what do you think? Like, if Biden, what do you think if Biden wins?
I mean, man, I think it's not gonna be as bad, right? I don't think it's gonna be as bad. I think they are different. They're similar in that they're old white geezers and they both benefit from the system as it is. That's just the way it is. I don't think it's gonna be ideal. No. Am I gonna vote for the dude? Yeah. And that's just because I know that like me sitting down and not doing anything is that's gonna be part of the problem if if he doesn't win. So I mean, I encourage people to go out there. I don't care if you don't like him or not, but like the point is getting Trumpas out. So, and that's it's a very difficult thing to do. I get it for people they don't want to do that, but like we have to do it. We need to, because if not, it's going to be more difficult. And I think a lot of the people, first time around in 2016, I was very much thinking, and I still believe it, but I'm less kind of vocal about it. Is the idea that like a lot of liberal white people who just didn't vote or voted other parties or this and that, because at the end of the day, they were going to be fine no matter what, right? They were going to benefit from the system. They were going to, they were going to wake up and, they could still be fine. But people of color can't afford that. We can't afford another loss. And because these policies, all these elections, they're going to directly impact us. And that's why I was just like, dude, like if I hear another white person saying I'm not going to vote or I'm not going to, I'm going to vote for another party, I'm just like, dude, because you don't care. I don't think they know, right? I don't think they know, but they'll get mad at me when I say that out loud, of course. But I think it's a fact for me, right?
Yeah, I think absolutely, man. I mean, the electoral politics for people of color is very, very important and always has been for everything
Mm-hmm.
from midterm elections, like you said, to presidential elections. And I think that's what white liberalism, right?
You
Like you
know.
said, has its limits. Is that it sometimes it takes a multicultural idea
Mm-hmm.
that we're all in this together equally. That's not what this fucking country was built on. Like, let's
Right, right. I mean, that's ideal, but let's keep it real, right? That's
keep
just
it
not what
real.
it
And
is.
so the
Yeah.
minute that I think that they can acknowledge, like you said, that this is a very unfair system,
Uh-huh.
right? Or actually exists on the backs of
Mm-hmm.
people of color specifically, and I would say even more women of color than men. But
Oh
anyway,
no, absolutely. Yeah.
you I think once they realize that, right, then that's when they start to become an ally. But like you said, it gets exhausting to keep reminding your white friends or not friends of like the system that you live in and the privileges that you have. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, and then it's even more frustrating when it's another person of color who just doesn't get it.
yeah, oh
I
yeah,
mean, I think that's the worst. I'm just like, dude, like, I'm like, are you kidding me right now? I'm like, you know what? And I became I become very aware of the fact that like, I'm never going to change anybody's mind. All I can do is just, lead by example and talk and then just have a discussion without the expectation that I'm going to change their mind, because that's just not going to happen. People don't change their mind unless they want to. Right.
yeah,
And it's just such a difficult thing to do. So it's irritating. It's frustrating. um that's why I think that he's going to get reelected again, and I think that's a big part of it, is that people are so stuck in their views and it's so us against them on both sides, that I'm just like, dude, like, the democracy is compromise. This is not majoritarianism, and that's what it's become, right? It's my way or the highway, and I'm just like, no, dude, like, it's everyone. That's a democracy.
yeah,
It's
pluralism.
yeah.
Yeah. There's really, yeah, like you said, it's this idea of like the left and the right.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's It's not very. There's no room for pluralistic ideas and
No.
patience. That's the beginning. I mean, the beginning of the Civil War, right? You study like the Spanish Civil War, brother against brother, uncle against,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's ideologies.
Yeah, and but it's very important, and like I said, it's I don't I mean it's dangerous. Having that type of division, right? Like you said, is a part of the erosion of democratic values in this country. That plus the recent lack of impeachment of the president around. I mean, just flat out, right? Like it seems like
Yeah,
due to
yeah.
the pandemic, we all just kind of forgot that there was this
Oh, I
whole.
mean, it was a convenience as hell. Absolutely. You know, and now he's pivoting. What is he pivoting to right now? Away from COVID, the COVID response. He's trying to do that. It's just always the next thing, right?
Yeah, rallies, Trump rallies, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's like this or that. I think there's what the Supreme Court's. Did they vote on that? By the way, like, did they vote on like whether he has to release all these, financial filings and whatnot?
Oh, I
Or
don't know. I haven't looked it up.
I know there was going to be a delay on that, but I mean, again, goes back to the judges, right? Who are the judges and which way are they going to lean? The whole idea that a judge isn't political is BS, right?
No, yeah, of course,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and it's ridiculous. So it is it getting any better? I like to think so. Because I very much feel like the world is kind of politics running like a pendulum. It swings one way and then the other. But as the world keeps, as we keep moving forward, sometimes I feel like it's not right. It's very easy to kind of get caught up in this whole thing. But then again, we had like a great 8 years with Obama. I mean, it was relatively great. I mean, you look at the big picture, there was a lot of crazy stuff that went on as well. But for the most part, like, yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
compared
right?
to this, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. In context, right? Like you comparison, like from one to the other.
yes, night and day.
Right,
Night
right,
and day.
right.
Like the worst, I think, local, mishap that he had was like wearing a tan suit. Maybe having
Right.
too much soul, maybe dancing a little too much or something. Now, internationally, of course, there's all kinds of stuff from black
Mm,
cells, arresting American terrorists without giving them due process, which is an argument in itself. Whatever, but yeah,
mhm.
compared to this craziness,
Yeah, I mean, he was sandwiched between Bush and this. So, I mean, of course, when you, and again, I'm not against him at all. I'm just gonna say that, like, when you have that perspective of just like
oh yeah.
that, then him, and then this, you're just like, dude. I mean, I miss the hell out of him.
Yeah, this is a joke. I mean, this is an oligarch. I think it's clear. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're just double dipping, right? The whole Trump family, everything from the
Yeah,
mom
yeah,
to the son are constantly just making business deals and profiting off of the positions in the White House. They're not qualified for half of the diplomatic missions that they go on.
yeah, yeah,
Who knows the type of like probably in-house compromise spending that they're doing with federal tax-paying dollars.
yeah.
It's a joke. It's like the mafia has taken over the government, man. Right?
Yeah,
Like
no, it's a Russia in the 90s.
it's a two-tiered system, right? And it goes back to a settler colonialist society, man. Look at the administration. Look at how much prison time was given to all of these crooks who have covered up for Donald Trump. How many people have been in prison? Over 20 something of them have been convicted.
And
I
I
mean,
mean, they're out now because of all this.
exactly. I mean, right. And let's talk about it. And then you have mob violence, right? Where
Uh-huh.
it takes video of a black man being followed for more than 4 minutes down in Georgia,
Uh-huh.
right? Uh, and the cover up by the DA and everything to get them arrested. Like you needed
Just to get them arrested, yeah.
just to get them arrested.
Hmm.
This man was shot twice in the chest with a damn shotgun. Another man was up top ready to fire. Another man was driving in his car recording because he entered a home that was under construction, right?
Yeah,
Like,
like he didn't even enter the home. He just looked in the window.
yeah, and I guess footage did come out that he was in the home,
Oh,
but what?
really? Oh,
Yeah, but there was also like 500 other people in the home, and they were all white. And of course, it just goes back to this idea. And what I'm getting at is this two-tiered system of justice in this country, right?
yeah,
Whether it's
yeah.
through police killings of the sister down in Louisville, Kentucky, right? Or
Yeah, 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 yeah. Where she was sleeping, right? And then her boyfriend or husband shot, with a gun that he owns.
right, It has
Yeah.
a Second Amendment, which is also racialized in this country to try to
Hmm.
defend himself, right? But then the cops dump some ungodly amount of ammunition into the house blindly, killing them, and it's the wrong home, right?
Yeah.
But it always seems to always be the wrong home with black people, right? Like
Right.
brown people, right? Like black and brown people, it's always the wrong home. But how come it's never the wrong home with white people?
Uh-huh.
Is it like they don't do crime? Like are there not white people who live in poverty? Which is dumb. We know there is, right? It's a
Right.
but
Right.
it's just like what I'm getting at is it's disgusting to see the type of justice, and it's really hard as an educator to teach children in
Yeah.
the faith now about democracy and
Hmm.
about justice and
Yeah.
about freedom. And that's where the critical part comes in, because as a critical educator, you need to be able to relate these major themes to their everyday realities and experiences, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
I have kids tell me like, well, how democratic is it when the electoral college won and 3+ million people of the popular vote, and we have to break that down? And I guess what I'm getting at is like, I think it's for me, it's really important for educators, people like you with podcasts, people with a voice, journalists, like the lifeblood and the heartbeat of a democracy, to continue to be truth seekers and truth tellers.
Hmm.
Because what's happening under authoritarians and dictatorship, the first thing that is lost is the truth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like the four seats of deceit. It's like media, academia, politics, and I think the fourth one is economics, right?
Yeah.
Or if you can control those, like you control the population. And it's up to us. What I'm getting at is to counter that, because I mean we're living in just grossly unjust times that I don't. And maybe I'm being pessimistic, and people are like, "Damn, he's so like pessimistic." I'm trying to be pragmatic, but I don't see it improving without civil society fighting the powers that be.
Right. I mean, yeah, and how it's just like the whole idea again, going back to Giannis, it's just like in and against, right? But it's so difficult just to get in the first place, and then you're just seen as loud. You can't show any emotion. You're not, and it's exhausting. So not everybody makes it there, and um, it's a difficult thing to do, but it's worthwhile. I see you doing it as an educator, and that's especially in the setting that you are. It is a private school, but it's important. Like if there's anybody that needs to hear this stuff, it's going to be you. You know what I mean? So, um, yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely. I
yeah.
struggle with that.
So, yeah, is there, I mean, we can start wrapping up here. I don't know what you got going on, but I mean, I really appreciate you coming on, man. You're always more than welcome to come on and just, talk. We'll talk politics and all that. I think you're kind of cutting out a little bit, but it's not a big deal. Um, but yeah, like, is there, can people follow you on Instagram or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I need to get
I mean, like, or do you have
more
any? I mean,
social.
if not, it's fine. It's not a big deal. But we can just have a convo, and we can point people in a certain direction to any website you want. Just send me the links. But yeah, again, I'm gonna hit stop record here, and then we can just debrief real quick. Thanks again so much for coming on. If you guys are listening, thank you so much for listening.